In a quiet neighborhood in Beverly Hills, as the evening sun was setting, Donald Trump's car slowly turned into one of the calm streets. With him were Secret Service agents and a few security vehicles, but it didn't take long for Trump to decide to leave those protections behind for a moment. That evening, a global figure, a former president, was heading to a neighbor's house in his own neighborhood. As his car passed through the walls of the large villas, his eyes were drawn to a small, humble home next to it. The house, bearing the marks of time, exuded a warm atmosphere. Inside, an elderly woman was preparing dinner alone. Margaret Miller was Trump's neighbor. A few years ago, she lost her husband, her children had moved to different cities, and recently, she had been struggling with loneliness. Trump had often exchanged pleasantries with Margaret but had never spent more time with her. That evening, as the night progressed, he decided to change that. Trump parked his car and, leaving the Secret Service behind, walked towards Margaret's door. The door was slightly ajar, as though he was expected. Trump gently knocked on the door. A soft voice from inside replied, "Who's there?" "Margaret, it's me, Donald. Can you open the door?" Trump said, slowly pushing the door open and glancing behind him. There was a brief silence. Then the door opened and Margaret, seeing Trump, took a few steps back in surprise. "Donald! At this hour? What are you doing here?" Margaret asked, surprised but gently keeping her eyes on him. Trump smiled and said, "I came to chat, Margaret. I wanted to share dinner with you. I'd like to spend some time with you." Margaret hesitated for a moment, then smiled and opened the door wider. "How can I say no to that?" she said. Trump stepped into Margaret's home. The interior was filled with a sense of lived-in warmth. The ticking of old wall clocks, the dim lighting, and the cozy atmosphere created a peaceful environment. Trump walked toward the kitchen and sat at the table with Margaret. Margaret was sitting at an old-fashioned dining table, and there was only a small meal laid out: mashed potatoes, lightly cooked steak, and a few vegetables. Trump said, "This looks really delicious. I've never had dinner like this before." Margaret smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "These are simple dishes, but it's the best I can do. I've been so lonely lately, but sometimes eating alone gives me peace." Trump grew quiet for a moment, noticing Margaret's loneliness. "Loneliness can be tough, can't it?" he said. "But sometimes, being alone brings opportunities too. People can listen to their inner voices." Margaret nodded. "I've been alone for so long that I've almost gotten used to it. But when the night comes, everything in the house goes quiet, and sometimes you just disappear. There used to be laughter, songs in this house. Now it's just these old photos left." Trump noticed the deep loneliness in her eyes and the sorrow in her expression. Something stirred inside him, but he kept an emotional distance. "Can I ask you something, Margaret?" he said. "It's hard to be alone, but when you look back at this house, is there anything that makes you happy?" Margaret paused for a moment. "Yes, maybe. The walls of this house have memories. Every corner has the sound of a time that's gone. But when I look back, what I remember most is the time spent together, the conversations with my loved ones. But time passes and everything changes. People change too." Trump was moved by her words. Yes, change is inevitable. But sometimes, small changes can make a big difference. As they continued eating, Margaret spoke about the burdens of the past and future. "I used to have so much work, I used to take care of people, care for the sick. But now I'm getting older, my children have their own lives, my husband's gone. Nothing's the same anymore." Trump looked at her quietly for a while eating. "Sometimes, when we face life's challenges, all we need is a chance and opportunity. Maybe I can do something for you. The one thing that can change a person's life is really believing in them and taking a step." Margaret was surprised by his words. "Really? I mean, you want to help me?" Trump took a deep breath. "Sometimes, people find it hard to help because they don't know what to do. But if we can create an opportunity for you, maybe you can start over." As dinner ended, Trump noticed the emotional struggle Margaret was facing. The stern expression on his face softened a bit. "Just give it a chance, Margaret," he said. "Let's make a change." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Trump gently took Margaret's hand and said, "Sometimes, we just need to show people one thing. That one thing might be this: you are an important person." The next day, Trump began looking for ways to help Margaret. Health insurance, a new living arrangement, and a small job opportunity. These were the first steps he took to end Margaret's loneliness. Trump's gesture spread throughout the neighborhood. People began to recognize him not just for his wealth, but also for his empathy and humanity. A year later, when Margaret thanked Trump again, she was so shocked by how much her life had changed that she could hardly believe it. And the story carried a deep meaning about how the bond two people formed in one evening could change their lives. This brings us to the end of the story. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell.